Namaste, this is Patty Barber, and I'm here to talk to you today about solutions for adrenal fatigue. The information included in this presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as medical advice. This presentation is intended for healthcare professionals and not for patients or the general public. Some of the products discussed are formulated according to traditional homeopathic principles and are not intended to treat any disease. If you are not a healthcare professional, please discontinue viewing and contact your healthcare provider for guidance regarding your healthcare goals. So just a little bit about me. I am a Trinity graduate, board-certified doctor of naturopathy. I'm an advanced digestive health professional and energy medicine practitioner. I have a private practice nestled within a chiropractic office in upstate New York, and I see a lot of digestive disorders, Lyme disease. I work on the whole person, body, mind, and spirit with energy medicine. I work on the emotions as well as the physical body because I believe that the two are very instrumental in helping that client get to their goals. So the agenda for this webinar, Understanding Adrenal Fatigue, we're going to talk about and look at the anatomy and physiology. We'll address the factors affecting the adrenal glands. We'll look at assessment tools for you to assess with your clients. We'll look at cortisol's effect on the body. We'll talk about the HPA axis. We're going to discuss adrenal support products, as well as help to identify the 4 stages of adrenal fatigue and repair protocols. And I will also share with you a case study from one of my clients. Adrenal fatigue. So what is adrenal fatigue? It's non-specific. It's a collection of a variety of symptoms related to abnormal adrenal gland rhythm. And so people with adrenal fatigue often look and act relatively normal. Fatigue is such a common complaint, and it's seen with so many other conditions that adrenal fatigue is often overlooked. And actually, currently, it's not really well recognized by the allopathic community. So this is a place where complementary medicine can really help those clients that are coming in to see you. People who have functional hypoglycemia usually are suffering from decreased adrenal function. And the adrenals affect a person's mental state. So you will see increased fears, anxiety, and depression with those individuals. They have intervals of confusion, increased difficulty in concentration, and less acute memory recall. So when the adrenals become exhausted, that client often becomes allergic to citrus fruits. So think lemons, limes, oranges, grapefruits, pineapple, cantaloupe, and even tomatoes. So that can be a little clue for you. And the clients will often present with other issues, sinus issues, low sex drive, they're constantly getting sick, they're very tired all the time, they have sleep issues, muscle and joint pains as well. So let's look at the anatomy and physiology of the adrenal glands. They're part of the endocrine system, and as you can see on the right, the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys near the spine, and they're located about 1 inch down underneath that 12th or last rib. That right adrenal is a pyramid or a triangular shape, and the left, as you can see, is more like a half moon shape. There's 2 sections. There's a cortex, which is the outer section, and the medulla, which is the inner section. So each adrenal is only about a 1 inch high by 1¼ to 2 inches wide, and about 1/4 inch thick. So think about the size of a walnut is what we're talking about for the size of an adrenal gland. So they might be small, but they certainly have mighty responsibilities. And when putting it into perspective, men, their adrenal glands are usually heavier than women's. Both adrenal glands are short distance from the aorta vein, and this placement allows for rapid adrenal response to hormonal messages transported via the blood. So think of it like a superhighway. The adrenals are also placed in close proximity to the liver, the pancreas, and the kidneys, as these are the organs that need rapid communication with the adrenals in situations requiring their immediate response to the adrenal hormones. So continuing with the anatomy and physiology, again, if you look at the picture on the lower right-hand side, it shows the medulla and each of the 3 zones of the cortex. They produce different hormones that serve a variety of body functions. So here we're focusing on the cortex, which collectively produces over 50 hormones. The outermost zone is the zona glomerulus, and that produces mineralocorticoids, which influence electrolyte and fluid balance. So think aldosterone. The next zone is the zona reticulata, and that produces glucocorticoids, which are steroids affecting blood sugar, and the most common is cortisol. Then the innermost layer is the zona reticularis, and that produces androgens that are converted to fully functioning sex hormones in the gonads and other targeted organs. So think estrogen, androsterone, and testosterone. So we're going to dive deeper into these and look at cortisol, aldosterone, and steroid sex hormones. So cortisol. Cortisol greatly influences the metabolism of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates to maintain blood glucose levels. People who suffer from adrenal fatigue usually have an irregular blood sugar pattern. These people usually crave sugar. Now, of course, when I think of craving sugar, I might also be looking to see if they're digesting their carbohydrates very well, or maybe there could even be some sort of yeast overgrowth. But in this case, we're going to look at the cortisol. Cortisol is regulated by the brain and influences behavior, mood, and excitability. So you can have too much or too little cortisol, and it's a powerful anti-inflammatory as well. Cortisol curbs non-essential functions during fight or flight situations. So think, digestion, reproduction. When you're running from that bear, whether it's the teddy bear or the grizzly bear, the challenges of life, the latest virus, your body is not thinking about digestion. It's not thinking about reproduction. It's not thinking about sleep. It's thinking about mobilizing the arms and the legs to get them to run. And deficient cortisol can also cause hypotension or low blood pressure. Aldosterone. Aldosterone is responsible for the maintenance of fluid or water and the minerals of the body. So think sodium, potassium, magnesium, and chloride, which is in the blood and the interstitial fluid. That's the area between the cells. Aldosterone works with other hormones, such as antidiuretic hormone from the pituitary, as well as renin and angiotensin 1 and 2 from the kidneys. Aldosterone keeps the fluid balance and salt concentration in homeostasis, and that homeostasis is roughly the same concentration as seawater. Aldosterone maintains blood pressure, and during stress response, it keeps the blood pressure up to help pump blood to the brain. With adrenal fatigue, cravings for salt is a direct result of the lack of adequate aldosterone. For these people, adding a quarter to a teaspoon of Himalayan or sea salt to their water will help. These are the people that Gatorade tends to make them feel worse because the potassium-sodium ratio, which is normally 15:1 sodium to potassium ratio, is further off. So some other ideas for these individuals: you can sprinkle kelp powder containing potassium and sodium on their food, or even use Desbio's multi-trace minerals in their water. Steroid sex hormones. So approximately 40% of sex hormones are a result of the adrenals. Remember, the production of all steroid hormones, begins with a very important and critical component, and that is cholesterol. So if you have a client that comes to you and they're having these difficulties and they are on a cholesterol lowering medication, that is something to be aware of. Women suffering from PMS and difficulty menopause have low adrenal functions and vice versa. In boys entering puberty, low adrenal function is associated with lighter beards, sparser hair on the arms and legs, and even less drive to achieve. So let's look at this chart, the steroid hormone production for the adrenal cortex. This is the biosynthesis of steroids from cholesterol. And as you look at the chart, you can see everything starts with cholesterol, and it's a complicated cascade that happens through a chain of enzyme reactions. Cholesterol is the building block to either stress and or sex hormones. And as we look at this chart, the steroidogenesis works in a wave formation, moving down that left column all the way to the bottom to aldosterone. And then once that's satisfied, the cascades or the enzyme reactions move over to the right-hand columns for things like cortisol and estrogen and DHEA. So the left column highlights the hydroxylase mineral corticoid pathways in red, which those influence electrolyte and fluid balance. The middle column in green highlights the glucocorticoid pathways, which affect blood sugar. And the far right column in blue highlights the pathway of the sex hormones. So think testosterone, estrogen, things like that. Now, our bodies make a finite amount of pregnenolone during the day. So if the amount of stress increases, then the demand to make cortisol goes up. And that raw material, that pregnenolone, as you can see in green in that center column, that your body would normally use to go to the right in that blue column to make the sex hormones, are literally stolen to make more cortisol. So again, remember, it starts at the top on the left, it goes all the way down to aldosterone, then moves over in the wave. Well, if your body's calling for all of the pregnenolone for cortisol, you can see that very little will go over to the right-hand side to produce the sex hormones. And that's a very critical piece. And you'll often hear people say, you know, there was a pregnenolone steal involved, and that's what they're talking about. So over time, that increased cortisol can lead to increased blood sugar levels, among other things. Remember, these demands to make cortisol goes up with stress. So besides the usual stressors like job, home life, and other stressors that the body can create, there's also a greater need for cortisol with things like vitamin B deficiencies, methylation issues, food sensitivities, bacteria and viruses, anemia, iron deficiencies, environmental toxins, parasites, heavy metals, and EMFs. Let's look at the medulla, which is the inner aspect or the innermost portion of the adrenals. And the medulla regulates the sympathetic nervous system by secreting epinephrine, which is adrenaline, and norepinephrine, which is noradrenaline. So think that fight or flight. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are catecholamines. They act as both neurotransmitters and hormones. So here we see this poor little guy on the right. He can't decide whether he's going to stand his ground and fight or if he's going to run. And the picture really depicts what someone will go through. Their eyes tend to dilate. They tend to become flushed. The heart rate increases. They might be trembling. Their body is ready to go. So epinephrine and norepinephrine are important for crisis situations. They work together to increase the air in the lungs, They dilate those blood vessels to the muscles. Again, they increase the heart rate and cause other physiological changes to help the body respond to stressful situations via that fight or flight response. Now, that could be your boss at work. It could be concerns with the virus that we're seeing or the potential upcoming election. Any of those things could be those stressors. These hormones are responsible for superhuman efforts, and we've often heard about the small woman who lifted the car off the child. So low levels of epinephrine and norepinephrine can result in both physical and mental concerns. So these people might come to you and say, my doctor has said I have anxiety, I have depression, I have hypoglycemia, I frequently have migraine headaches, I can't sleep well, I don't feel very alert, I have memory problems, I have a foggy brain, I'm exhausted all the time, and I really don't have any motivation. So let's dive a little deeper into that fight or flight to get a better picture. So with epinephrine or adrenaline, again, it increases the heart rate and blood flow and faster breathing. It increases blood sugar levels for fuel for the muscles. Epinephrine increases strength and physical performance. And this is to help your body run from that bear, and it's part of that sympathetic nervous system response. So what's not important to the body at that time are things like digestion, reproduction, immune system support, higher emotions like empathy. So if you're stuck in fight or flight over time, chronic stress, poor nutrition, medications, and certain health conditions can affect the body's ability to produce and respond to these stressors. Let's look at the factors affecting the adrenal glands. So, oh my goodness, why do you have adrenal fatigue? The better question is, who doesn't at this point have adrenal fatigue with what is going on in our world today? Clients have lost their jobs. Small business owners are struggling to stay open. There's fears of a second lockdown. And actually, the county next to us was talking about doing a lockdown if their numbers don't decrease over the course of the next couple days. There's concerns of the upcoming election. Parents are frantic to try and find support as their kids may only attend 1 or 2 days a week of school if they attend that. People are afraid to go near their elderly parents because they fear they will give them a deadly virus. Clients might have an abusive spouse, and if they have normally had the house to themselves and now their spouse is working from home, that person can't get away from that toxic environment. Children who normally have an unsettled home life where school was their escape, they may be struggling now as well because they can't leave their house very often. They're not going to school every day. They can't play their sports. So there's all sorts of ways that people are encountering the magnification of what's going on and creating adrenal fatigue. So the causes of adrenal fatigue, emotional stress, as I just spoke about, most people from the moment they get up in the morning to the moment they hit the bed again at night, they have every moment planned of their day. They can't squeeze enough in. It's fast-paced life. They get to work. Their bosses want more out of them than they can give at a home. They can't get everything done. They've got deadlines. They're just stressed. Many people are not working with their diets very well, and that is also creating an issue for them. So I know here in upstate New York, when we were sequestered for a few months, most of the market, the products in the markets, the cereals, the sugary snacks, the ice creams, the candies, they were all decimated. The pastas, the canned foods, they were gone. But yet what was prevalent on the shelf that most people were not buying were all the great organic foods. So they just simply were not feeding their bodies the right foods to help them in the process. Most Americans do not get enough sleep. We're lucky if most of them get about 6 hours. And if you're dark-skinned, dark-eyed, you need more. So you need at least 8 hours of sleep. So that kind of ties into this cause of adrenal fatigue as well. And let's not forget, we're talking also about potential pollutants or chemicals. It could be the chlorine in the swimming pools, the fluoride in the water, antibiotics in the meats, the household chemicals. I know when I walk into the market these days, even in the health food section, people are very diligent about cleaning all of the cabinets and the handles and things like that. And so whether you're walking through the area or you're the person that actually is doing the cleaning, you're experiencing a greater increase in the toxicity of these household chemicals. So in addition to this, the trauma of surgeries or accidents can also cause adrenal fatigue, as well as chronic diseases such as diabetes and autoimmune disorders. If you look at this poor little adrenal gland, there's so many factors affecting it. So it could be the death of the loved one that puts them in this state. Maybe it's financial pressures, especially in the current environment. They don't get a chance to relax much. They don't even know what relaxation looks like. There's lots of fear. Things are out of their control. They might be helping or trying to self-medicate the body using coffee, caffeine, Red Bulls, things like that. They may not be eating the right foods. They're not getting enough sleep. And this time of year, the allergies are also kicking in, not to mention that there's potential for emotional stress. So lots of things affect the adrenal glands every day. Common symptoms. So those people, again, excessive fatigue and exhaustion. Sleep disturbances. They don't sleep well. They are overwhelmed. Even the littlest thing that would not be a big deal for most people can become this huge ordeal for them. They just can't handle it. They're constantly craving salty or sweet foods. Even the coffee, they're the ones with the pot of coffee in the morning, the Red Bulls midday. They're slow to recover from those injuries and the illnesses. Every time you turn around, they've got some sort of cold going on. They certainly don't have a sex drive. They don't have time for stuff like that. If they're in menopause, they're probably experiencing a lot more symptoms as a result. And also, if they are prone to PMS syndrome, this could be a result of it. Irritable bowel, as well as poor digestion. They can't think well. They might have been diagnosed with things like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, ischemic heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis. They may have even had chronic or reoccurring bronchitis or pneumonia, and sometimes even asthma and allergies. They take longer than normal to recover, even just from exercise. So the metabolic effect on the adrenal glands and adrenal fatigue. So again, as I stated earlier, all the energy is mobilized to the arms and to the legs for the body to run. The body is not going to digest anything well at this point. And most people, if you ask them whether it's on their way to work in the morning or for their break at lunchtime, they're hitting some sort of drive-through and they're eating as they're driving to someplace because they're running behind. So their body is not going to digest anything very well. They're going to have all sorts of disorders there. So some of the things that you can do to help those individuals, a good digestive enzyme is important. Encourage them to get off that hamster wheel. One of the things that I suggest to my clients is that not only should they eat in a calm and restful environment and take their time to consume their food, but before they eat, doing a few minutes of belly breathing is very beneficial. That will get them out of that fight or flight stage. So at least 2 or 3 minutes of that deep belly breathing. And when I say deep belly breathing, I tell them that The rib cage should expand side to side. The belly really should come out. They should take their time and they should sit up straight and take a really good deep breath and repeat that for a few minutes. That will help them for the digestive side of this equation. So let's look at some assessment tools that can help you when dealing with your clients. So how do you identify adrenal fatigue? So you can look at assessing in a clinical atmosphere. So questionnaires are great, whether it's a new client or if you have a stress analysis, you can use those kind of questionnaires. There are some evaluation components you can use, such as a Ragland's test. So what that is you take a baseline blood pressure of the client while they're sitting. The cuff should be level with the heart and the palm should be up. Then you have the patient go into a supine position and give them a chance to lay down for a minute or so after resting for at least 60 seconds before you take their blood pressure. Encourage them to lay horizontal for at least 5 minutes and then take their blood pressure again. So you're taking it 3 times. So the third time you're going to have them stand up, and as they stand up, you're going to take that blood pressure. So if it drops more than 10 points, that's a good indicator that you may be dealing with some sort of adrenal fatigue. Normally, the blood pressure should rise 10 to 20 points. Now, with the Ragland's test, make sure that client is not dehydrated, as that can cause a drop in blood pressure. The more severe the drop, the greater the adrenal fatigue. And occasionally, a client can have a normal or high blood pressure and still have adrenal fatigue due to the lack of elasticity in their arteries. So think hardening of the arteries. If the client is vegan, their blood pressure may normally be low. Generally with vegan vegetarians, we see it about 95/65, but you will still get a drop in the blood pressure when going from that supine to standing position. Then if you're able to do saliva hormone testing in your office, that is another great assessment tool. So if you are doing saliva hormone testing, there are 4 different times of the day that the saliva should be collected. Between 6 and 8 a.m. or within 1 hour of waking, when the levels are the highest for cortisol. Between 11 and 12 in the afternoon. The third collection should be between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. And the last collection should be between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. So when you're looking at the different forms for testing of hormones, saliva hormone testing tells us about the amount of hormone inside the cells where the hormone reaction takes place. The blood testing measures hormones circulating outside the cells. And if you're able to do dried urine testing, that can help you dive deeper into seeing if there are issues with the pathways. So some other assessment tools that you can use with your clients, the Sargent's white line test, and you take the dull section of a spoon and drag it along the client's abdomen. If it turns red almost immediately, there's no fatigue. But if it turns white and typically gets whiter over time, that could indicate that there may be some fatigue. Now, the Sargent's white line is present in only moderate to severe cases. It's best to check blood pressure, Sargent's white line, and the iris contraction, which we'll talk about in a moment, because the blood pressure and the Sargent's often is found with those moderate to severe cases only. So now let's look at the iris contraction. So in a dark room, allow the client to settle for a few minutes to allow the pupils to dilate, and shine the flashlight across the eyes from the side of the face, not directly head on. You don't want to blind them. and wait for a reaction for about 30 seconds. A dilation will take place within 2 minutes and last approximately 30 to 45 seconds before it recovers and contracts again. So if the person has, the pupils normally constrict and stay that way. If they can't hold that contraction due to the weak iris, that's the clue, that's the indicator. Now, this form of evaluation, the iris contraction test, can also help give you clues as the client starts to recover. So as they start to recover from adrenal fatigue, the iris will remain contracted for longer periods of time. The iodine patch test for thyroid concerns, you can also look at that. Creating a 1-inch patch with 1 drop of iodine, the oral iodine, under the arm or placed on the belly or the wrist. And it should disappear within 24 hours. You can also check the basal body temperature for thyroid concerns. And typically, the temperature you should see for your client is 97.8 to 98.2. That's normal. Consistency lower than those temperatures could show you that the thyroid is having difficulties, it's underactive, and it's consistent. If it's consistently higher, it could be an overactive thyroid. Let's look at cortisol's effect on the body. So the function of cortisol, the steroid hormone used to maintain resistance to stress. Remember, it could be physical stress, emotional stress, or even trauma. Cortisol counters inflammation and helps with allergies. Cortisol functions to increase that blood sugar by stimulating the liver to convert amino acids to glucose, which is the primary fuel source for energy. Cortisol mobilizes and increases fatty acids in the blood from the fat cells and is used as fuel. It also helps to maintain personality and emotional stability. So people who suffer from low blood sugar frequently suffer from adrenal fatigue. And low blood sugar is most likely to occur for those people somewhere around 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and again between 3 and 4 p.m. Let's look at cortisol and blood sugar balance. As we see on the left-hand side, excess cortisol diminishes glucose utilization by the cells and increases blood sugar levels in the blood. It sets up the client for insulin resistance, which can lead to type 2 diabetes. And on the right-hand side, we can see what happens with deficiency. So we could have excess or we could have not enough. So when there's a deficiency, cortisol is inadequate. It cannot raise the sugar and hypoglycemia will result. So cortisol is essential for maintaining those blood glucose levels, as you can see. Cortisol works with insulin from the pancreas to provide adequate glucose to the cells for its energy. So under stress, the body needs more glucose from various tissues and organs. People who suffer from low blood sugar frequently suffer from adrenal fatigue. Low blood sugar is most likely to occur, as I stated before, around 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's why at 3 or 4 o'clock, you'll see those people, they need the Red Bulls, they need the sugary foods to keep them going. Otherwise, they really crash. So let's look at cortisol's effect on sleep. So there is a growing number of research studies suggesting reciprocal associations between sleep and the activity of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or HPA axis. Cortisol goes through this circadian pattern, as you can see on the right-hand side. Traditionally, if we look at the chart here, it should start to peak somewhere after 6 a.m. It looks like probably around 8 a.m. So it should start to rise in the morning, and then it will gradually decline in levels throughout the day until the evening. And at night, there is a continued decline until the next day. So under stress, the body produces more cortisol and can override this natural circadian rhythm. Frequent snacks And meals can help these clients to keep their cortisols at higher levels for more of the day. Exercise can also help to elevate those levels. So by doing just those simple things in conjunction with other components for that client can help to decrease those high cortisol evening levels. If the patient wakes between 1 and 3 a.m., that could be a clue that the liver might be lacking the glycogen reserves that is needed for conversion by the adrenal glands to keep the blood glucose levels needed during the night. So these hypoglycemic levels wake the patient, or the client at night. Often, those who have panic attacks, nightmares, or restless sleep between 1 and 4 a.m. are experiencing this issue. So to counteract it, what you can do is have the client take some high-quality protein before bed, such as a spoonful of a nut butter, just to kind of give them what they need to make their liver happy. I do suggest that they stay away from peanut butter. Peanut butter can be quite moldy for many individuals, so something like an almond butter is much better. Let's look at the HPA axis. So the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So if we focus first on the hypothalamus, it's a small region of the brain. It regulates the autonomic nervous system. So think about the things that we normally don't think about: breathing, heart rate, circadian rhythm, adrenal function, energy levels. And the hypothalamus also makes corticotropin releasing hormone, or CRH, and it transports that to the pituitary gland. So for the pituitary gland, the pituitary is often called the master gland. It controls several other hormone glands, including the thyroid, the adrenals, the ovaries, and the testes. It produces many important hormones: antidiuretic hormones, growth hormones, luteinizing hormone. It also produces ACTH, anticorticotropic hormone. And there's 2 lobes. So the anterior lobe of the pituitary has to deal with the production of hormones. The posterior lobe deals with the storage of the hormones. The other component involved in the HPA axis is the adrenals. And as I alluded to earlier, the adrenals are small, triangular shapes sitting on top of the kidneys. We went over what they produce as far as hormones. They help to regulate metabolism, your immune system, your blood pressure. They secrete both sex and stress hormones, and they regulate our fight or flight response. Okay, so let's look at how the HPA axis works. So if we look on the right-hand side, we can see that everything begins with the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus secretes the corticotropin releasing hormone, or the CRH. From there, it signals the pituitary to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. The pituitary then stimulates the adrenal cortex to produce glucocorticoid hormones. So think cortisol. So this is the positive portion of the HPA axis. Now, the amount of cortisol circulating at any moment is regulated by a complex interaction between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. Look at the negative feedback loop. So as I just spoke about earlier, the hypothalamus signals the pituitary by releasing CRH. The pituitary signals the adrenals by releasing ACTH. Then we have cortisol circulating in the blood. So what happens is, when there's enough cortisol circulating in the blood, there's a negative feedback loop. And what that means is the cortisol signals the pituitary and the hypothalamus that there's enough in the bloodstream and they don't need to produce any more. So think about it as, say, for example, a furnace. If you normally keep your temperature in your house at 70 degrees and the temperature is 70 degrees, the furnace doesn't go on. That's part of that negative feedback loop. But if your temperature drops to 65, then the furnace is going to get a signal to start producing more heat. And that's similar to the positive portion of this loop. So what happens in adrenal fatigue? The signal from stress is still received by the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus then still sends the signal to the pituitary. But when it gets to the adrenals, nothing happens. Those poor adrenals are exhausted. They're so overtaxed that they can't respond to stress anymore. Sex hormones and other endocrine organs try to compensate, but it leads to further low hormone and neurotransmitters elsewhere. This leads to fatigue, anxiety, depression, and so much more. So we're going to look at adrenal support products to help you, to help your clients that are coming in. We're going to discuss adrenal synergy, liposomal pregnenolone, liposomal DHEA, household detox, HPA access, liposomal calm, viral, vitalize, hormone combination, as well as male and female stimulant. Liposomal pregnenolone, this is derived from wild yam, and liposomal pregnenolone is important in that cascade. Remember when I showed you the chart, the body makes a finite amount of pregnenolone every day. So if we're in stress, the body, or the adrenals especially, call for the pregnenolone to be used for cortisol, and not much is used for the sex hormones. So using liposomal pregnenolone to help the adrenals in that fashion is very helpful. And the dosage is 40 drops a day. Now, another way you can use liposomal pregnenolone is for someone who needs something for chronic pain. So for example, someone is having a surgery, they don't want to use a pharmaceutical, or maybe they have a problem with it, they've gotten the authorization from their healthcare practitioner that they can use something else. So liposomal pregnenolone will actually rival an opioid as far as pain management is concerned, but it won't have the addiction properties that are currently seen with the opioids. So the way that it is used in that fashion, it's 4 times the normal dose. So it's 200 milligrams a day, very short term, 7 to 14 days maximum. Now, when you're using liposomal pregnenolone or even liposomal DHEA, which we'll go over in a minute, they should be refrigerated after opening. So liposomal DHEA. So DHEA and sex hormones both limit cortisol's possible detrimental effects on cells, and at the same time, it facilitates its actions by functioning as hormonal antioxidants. So as we know from the steroid cascade chart, the adrenal output of sex hormones and their precursors decrease with chronic stress and adrenal fatigue. So less DHEA is available to export and used by other cells. Low DHEA has been associated with an increase in biological aging. So with this product, liposomal DHEA, you can use for these clients. When you use either the liposomal DHEA or the liposomal pregnenolone, there should be some sort of testing involved to monitor their hormones. If you're using too much of this for a client, you will hear them say things like, I frequently am getting headaches since I've started this product, but I don't normally have that problem. Or I'm getting pimples and I didn't have those since I was a teenager. For men, you will hear them say things like, I am so much more aggressive, or their spouses might say that too for them. For women, you might hear them say, you know, I'm starting to get these dark hairs on my face, and I never had that before. Those are your signals that you're giving them too much. Their body doesn't need the product. If you discontinue it in a couple days, those concerns will dissipate. HPA access, or HP access. This is for the temporary relief of symptoms related to circadian rhythm imbalances, such as overuse of stimulants, anxiousness, sleep disturbances, circulatory imbalances, decreased sex drive, and salt cravings. So if you take a look at the list of homeopathics in here, it has things like iodium, which is iodine, calicarb, which is potassium, adrenalinum, which is adrenaline, cortisone. It has DHEA, melatonin, testosterone, aldosterone homeopathics. It has corticotropin-releasing hormone, the CRH, as well as sapia, which is the ink of cuttlefish. Liposomal Calm. I really enjoy using this product. I have used this on children as well as adults. It provides essential amino acids and calming botanicals to help support that feeling of calmness and relaxation. What I really like is that someone can take this product within 15 minutes. It will promote that feeling of calmness for them. It does not affect their vasomotor skills. They can still think clearly without a problem. It contains great ingredients like L-theanine, holy basil, dwarf morning glory, GABA, and 5-HTP. Anxious. Anxious is for the temporary relief of symptoms related to stress, including mild anxiousness, worry, overwhelm, and mild fear. So in this product, just to highlight some of the homeopathic ingredients, it has helianthum, which is rock rose, to help replace a sense of panic and helplessness with calm and courage. Clematis, which helps encourage and concentration. It has cacao, and who doesn't love chocolate in their homeopathic? It has lithium in here to help with head tension, and Valeriana officialis to help with impatience, irritability, and nervous restlessness. Household detox. Remember, some of the stress on the body can be from the chemicals in our environment. And household detox is for the temporary relief of symptoms related to toxicity, such as headache, fatigue, body aches, and skin complaints. It addresses the issues related to the general toxicity as well as liver toxicity and the effects on the endocrine disruptors. It has homeopathic ingredients to help with things like aluminum, benzium, bisphosphonyl A, dioxin, glyphosate, Teflon, petroleum, just to name a few. Virile. Virile is for the temporary relief of symptoms related to male hormone imbalances such as impotence, low self-esteem, lack of communication, stubbornness, loneliness, fear of poverty, gout, and sleeplessness. So if we look at some of the ingredients, clematis, commonly used for headaches, rhododendron, which is Siberian snow rose or alpine rose, sable to support prostate health, nat myrrh, which is common sea salt. It also has cortisone, testosterone, hypothalamus, prostate homeopathics, as well as bryonia, which is wild hops. Adrenal synergy. Adrenal synergy supports the adrenal glands along with that HPA axis with a blend of glandulars, essential nutrients, and targeted botanicals. So the B vitamins are burned up very quickly and very easily during stress, and you can see the supplement has vitamin B6, folate, and panolytic acid. It also has vitamin C and zinc. It has glandulars such as adrenal, cortex, pituitary, hypothalamus, and thymus, and they are derived from either porcine or bovine. It does have licorice root in here as well, which helps with cortisol so that cortisol can be spared so those individuals are better able to handle those stress situations. 2 capsules in the morning is a great solution for those individuals where this is appropriate. Vitalize. Vitalize combines nutrients, botanicals, and amino acid precursors to support healthy mood, emotional balance, and cognitive performance. So again, stress, burning up the B vitamins. This product has B6, B12 in here for them. It has bacopa, St. John's wort, 5-HTP, L-theanine, GABA, So it's got a great combination for those individuals. Now, I know I've heard two different schools of thought where it comes to St. John's wort extract. Some people or practitioners will say they do not use St. John's wort if a client is on an SSRI. Others have said they've not seen an issue with it. So just be aware of that and make your own clinical determination from there. Hormone combination. Hormone combination is to temporarily relieve symptoms related to hormone imbalances or insufficiencies in both men and women. So this will include low energy, inability to handle stress, trouble focusing, changes in mood, infertility, irregular menstrual cycles in women, and lack of libido. So it has the hormones in here, it has DHEA, it has cholesterol, which is cholesterol. That's what all the hormones start with. It has progesterone, testosterone, aldosterone, cortisone, and follicle stimulating hormone. Again, all homeopathic. Female stimulant is to temporarily relieve symptoms related to female hormone problems such as fatigue and low energy. So in here it has, I'll just highlight a couple. Lilium, which is tiger lily, to help with depression and weepiness. Sapia, which is from the ink of the cuttlefish, to help with menopause. Estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone homeopathics. And then it also has homeopathic healthy tissue, such as uterus, umbilical cord, and adrenal. Male stimulant is to temporarily relieve symptoms related to male hormone problems, such as libido difficulties and fatigue. So some of the ingredients in here, Damiana, which helps mental function and can help with sexual problems. Cantharis, which is Spanish fly, which helps with urinary system. Diencephalon helps maintain normal sleep cycles. It has homeopathic pineal gland, cortisone, testosterone, and prostate as well. Now let's look at the 4 stages of adrenal fatigue. So the first phase is the acute phase, and that's the beginning or the alarm phase. Most people will be in and out of this phase most of their life. Phase 2 is resistance, continuing that alarm phase. Phase 3 is exhaustion, which continues the resistance phase. And phase 4 is that failure or that complete burnout. Phase 1 is that alarm phase. Again, the person is able to immediately react to the stressors. The body produces an increased level of mental alertness and arousal, and the body is able to provide an increase in insulin, glucose, epinephrine, norepinephrine, DHEA, and cortisol. Many people go in and out of this stage, and it could be just for their entire lifetime, but some people will then continue to phase 2. So these people might be tired at the end of the day, but they can still function. There's no major symptoms, and their daily activity is not affected. Detox first and always. Detox is recommended first stage of any adrenal protocol. Why is that? Let's face it, pretty much all clients have some sort of toxic burden. Relieving the body of toxicity often gives a clearer client picture. Homeopathic detoxification can temporarily relieve symptoms during a protocol, and this allows time for you to develop your client's protocol. DesBio's The Power of 3, the OmniCleanse Detox. This is designed around the integrative approach that combines nutritionals, botanicals, and homeopathics. It adds nutritionals and a recommended diet to a comprehensive homeopathic detox protocol for additional support. So as you see on the right-hand side, this OmniCleanse kit includes a comprehensive homeopathic detox kit, an OmniCleanse powdered beverage, and then the OmniCleanse capsules, which help with phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox. So this is a great 2-month gentle detoxification program. Phase 1, protocols. Anxious, the homeopathic designed to temporarily relieve symptoms of mild to moderate stress. We can also look at potential for this individual vitalize to support the body to increase alertness and mood. And then liposomal methyl B, because again, they burn up their B vitamins pretty quickly. Liposomal methyl B can support the body to help break down the catecholamines. In phase 2, that is resistance, continuing the alarm phase. And these people, you'll hear, they might have daytime anxiety, irritability. They're the ones that crave the caffeine and the sugar. They start with a pot of coffee in the morning. They have insomnia. They have problems falling asleep. They wake up in the middle of the night frequently. They're constantly getting sick with low immunity. Their metabolism begins to become sluggish. They tend to gain weight. It can often be corrected for these individuals with time off or vacation, stress management, things like that. They may also have a lower sex drive in the process. So for these individuals, some of the things that you can look at as a potential to help them for solutions: adrenal synergy to help support the body to normalize the stress response, hormone combination to temporarily relieve symptoms associated with adrenal hormone production, and adrenal support for the temporary relief of symptoms associated with adrenal function impairment. Now, phase 3, we're getting into it a little deeper for these clients. The endocrine system continues to overproduce those stress hormones or the cortisol at the expense of those sex hormones. There's significant drops in testosterone, DHEA, as pregnenolone. They're still functioning during the day, but they're really tired. They're kind of like the Eeyores. You talk to them and they're not animated. They don't have much energy in their voice. It's just kind of low key. They're barely getting by. They can barely, get through their work day. They've got a low sex drive. There are the slugs on the sofa as soon as they get home. They're constantly sick. This type of phase could go on for months or even years. And these people, you hear them say, "Oh God, I'm exhausted all the time." There's constant anxiety. They might be wired and tired. Again, they self-medicate with lots of sugar in the afternoon, the coffee in the morning, the Red Bulls. They might have been diagnosed by their medical doctor with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. So the allopaths may also use things like anti-anxiety medications, antidepressant medications, sleeping medications, and stimulants to help these individuals. And sometimes that can make it worse. So we can help support their adrenals and their body systems in this process. So the protocol to help them in phase 3, adrenal synergy and liposomal pregnenolone to support the body to normalize stress response. Adrenal support for the temporary relief of symptoms associated with impaired adrenal function, as well as female stimulant or male stimulant, which is the next step in temporary relieving symptoms associated with failing adrenals. Phase 4, this is the burnout or failure phase. So these people are severe fatigue and insomnia. They have severe endocrine disruptors. They have continuation and worsening of all the symptoms of those previous stages. They're unable to produce the sex and stress hormones. The reserves are low. The cortisol is low. They're really tired. These people, you may not even be able to get them out of bed. They may not even be able to work anymore. The littlest thing is just the mountain in front of them, and they can't think correctly. They can't function very well. This type of individual will require extreme changes because sometimes it can be from their work life that has put them in this situation, or a very toxic home life. They're going to need to change that around in order to get better. And this may be acquired, this phase 4 or failure. It could be years to get them to this stage. And most of the time, it's unrecognized by the medical doctor. So this is really a place where you can help them to support their body systems as they start to get healthy and feel better. The protocol for this burnout stage or failure stage: liposomal pregnenolone. You can also look at liposomal DHEA, cortisol, which helps for the temporary relief of symptoms related to adrenal glands, such as joint aches, fatigue, and low energy. Adrenal synergy may be an option for this type of client, and adrenal synergy supports the body to normalize the stress response. You might want to also look at adrenal support for the temporary relief of symptoms associated with impaired adrenal function, as well as female or male stimulant, which is that next step in temporary relieving symptoms associated with adrenal fatigue. Here is a great adrenal support educational piece for you that talks about all the phases of adrenal failure, what the symptoms are, as well as some of the solutions to help support the body systems. So I'm going to give you a case study from one of my clients. So I had an individual whose name is Alexis, and she is a 29-year-old female. She was married for under 2 years. She was diagnosed by her allopathic medical doctor with depression, anxiety, insomnia, and digestive issues, including constipation. She had inconsistent menses, and her priority was to get off those 4 pharmaceuticals for anxiety, depression, insomnia, digestion, and acne. Now, as a complementary health care practitioner, I can never tell them to go off the medication. However, Alexis had a conversation with her medical doctor, and her medical doctor had encouraged her, if she could find the right support, that it would be appropriate to go off these medications. And she had the help of her medical doctor in discontinuing the medications as she started to feel better. So we took a look at blood work that her medical doctor had done for her, which indicated that DHEA was low, as well as estradiol. And during her intake evaluation, she shared that she was very close to both of her parents, and that her father died suddenly 4 months before her wedding. And her difficulties began 1 month after the wedding. So again, look at those emotional components for that connection. 1 month after the wedding, she began having night terrors and panic attacks, and her primary care physician placed her on medications to help with her symptoms. Alexis was still able to work, but when she came home, she was the couch potato. Her sex drive was non-existent. Remember, she is in our honeymoon. That is not what she wanted. I did a Quest 4 biofeedback scan, which indicated chronic issues with the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, adrenals, and hormones. So I knew those were areas to help support and nurture to the body. Upon exam, Alexis was in phase 3 adrenal exhaustion. She also had toenail fungus and a rash below the bra line, indicating a yeast overgrowth. So she was attempting to self-medicate herself with sugar and caffeine, which also led to a yeast overgrowth. What I did with Alexis is, first I started her on the OmniCleanse kit, which we discussed earlier. 2 weeks later, we began with hormone combination, Vitalized, when she got the approval to discontinue her SSRI from her primary care physician, Thyrosin, as well as adrenal synergy. She began meditation and breathing techniques to also help her. In 2 months, Alexis began the Candida Clear Series Symptom Relief Kit to help with the rash, the toenail fungus, the cravings for sugar, and she also used tea tree oil topically on the toenail fungus. And I'm really happy to tell you that after 6 months, Alexis started to feel like her old self. She was able to get to bed at night. She had no difficulties getting up in the morning. She felt like a honeymooner for the first time. Her sex drive was back, and her menses started to become regular. She was starting to get her life back by supporting her body systems and working with her medical doctor in this process. So I hope that you have enjoyed today's webinar, and I really want to encourage you to reach out to DesBio. DesBio is amazing when it comes to education and support of their practitioners. So you can email DesBio at practitionersupport@desbio.com. You can contact DesBio at 1-800-827-9529, or you can book a consult to go over some of the information either in this presentation or additional questions that you might have about products on the website at that address there. So thank you so much for joining us today, and it has been my pleasure. I wish you all a fabulous and amazing weekend.